Dominic will be here this afternoon. Mark Dominic wants him at Tampa Bay. As you know, Matt Moore's a good locker room guy. And a guy named Adam Schefter texted me or called me and said, hey, what are you going to do with Matt? And I said, we don't know yet. And I said, are you coming to Indy? True story. Yeah, I'll be in Indy. I said, hey, you'll be the first to know if I can get you to stop by for 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I think this is his maybe 15th, 18th year. My friend, and we're lucky to have him at SNWW, Adam Schefter. Adam, welcome.
We get set up here and settled in as I take the stage, and we wait for the rest of the people to come up here. I'm going to put my jacket over here, if that's okay. Yeah, it's all good. We're going to stay loose, free, and easy. Lynn said that I've done this. Lynn, how many years did you say? 15, 18? I think it's close. I was going to say closer to 20 is what it feels like. Closer. I've been coming to the combine now for 32 years. So the first time that they asked me to come up here and give a speech, there was so much joy and excitement to be able to face a group of people, students, and pass along some of the knowledge that I've gained through the years. I will say, off the record, not for reporting or anything, I've done this speech at this time of the year, every year before the combine, and it's always nice and calm. This is the first time that I could ever remember stepping up here and thinking there's some things floating out there right now that could happen while we're on the stage. Maybe, maybe not, we'll see. But I usually come into this conversation, this talk, and it's an uninterrupted hour. And as we stand up here today right now, I don't know if you can see it, but I've got one of my phones sitting right here. I got my other phone over here. And we're just waiting to see if we're going to be interrupted today. Because that could happen. And if it does, you'll watch it happen in real time the way that my children do at home when we're waiting on stories to come in and we're waiting on information. And I still, and I guess this is part of the reason I still do it, I still get wound up and adrenaline rushes, and I'm not myself. Even at breakfast this morning, I was with two guys from a couple of teams, and like, you're a little off this morning. And I'm a little off right now, but I got my game day face mode on. So this is the equivalent of a football player talking to a group an hour before the game. And that's what we're talking about here. So if I'm not as expansive and I seem a little tense and a little tight, my apologies. Just telling you there's a bunch of things floating around out there. We're going to see how it's going to go down as we talk. Yesterday, it was interesting. If you hear that beep, it's always possible. Yesterday, I had a meeting with a young guy on the team. Name of the guy, name of the team doesn't matter. Hold on a second. We are living in real time here, folks. Okay. And the guy, he's a young guy who's been with the team for a couple of years. And we talked about what he does and how he rose up and the work he had done to get a position on an NFL team where he helps out. And at the end, he said to me, I got one question. How do I continue? And this is a question that many of you will ask either now, at this stage of your career, or maybe in a couple of years. But he's like, how do I get recognition? How do I get the word spread about what I'm doing? How do I speed up the timeline to get to where I want to go? And I'm sure many of you have wondered the same thing, like, how do I get the clock moving? How do I jumpstart my career? I can remember when I was this guy's age, and I was a young newspaper reporter in Denver, And I think about it now, I thought when I was 23, 24, that I was good enough to become the sports newspaper columnist of the Rocky Mountain News, that why wasn't I given that chance? I was young, I was hungry, I was determined. It should have been a no-brainer in my mind, and it took a long time. And as I get older, I realized how little I knew, and how inexperienced I was, and how ill-prepared I would have been for a job that at the time I thought I was ready for, but I wasn't. And I think about that often, and I thought about that when this particular individual yesterday asked me how he could get the word spread. And he wasn't asking like me to tweet, hey, look at the job this guy's. It wasn't like that. He was asking in a general sense, how do I get my name out there? How do I spread the word about what I'm doing? And I told him, and I would tell everybody in this room the very same thing. You don't have to worry about spreading word about the job you're doing. You don't have to think about and worry about how fast that's going to do. The most effective way to accomplish that, always, is to put your nose down, to work as hard as you can, and to let your actions and work do the talking. Because if you're working hard and you're getting done everything that you need to, the people all around you are going to notice. And I said to this particular individual, on a 30 coaches around. Some of those coaches go on to coach in different places. There are tons of members of the front office. They go on to go coach different places. People notice good work from people. People want good work from people. And so if you're doing your job the way you should, and you're treating your fellow employees all around you the way that you should, then those sort of things are going to take care of themselves. When I was a young newspaper reporter in Denver, and I thought I was ready to take on the world and become a sports newspaper columnist sooner than I ever got the chance to do, I continued to just work hard. And I realized that the less time that I spent thinking about other jobs and how to get to other jobs, the quicker I got to other jobs. So you would think that by putting your focus and energy into other things and thinking how you can advance, that might expedite it. And I would argue it might be just the opposite, because you're detracting from the focus and energy that you should be having on your current job and doing the great job that you do there. And these things, over time, they usually work out if you're doing what you're supposed to do. And it takes a long time, it did for me, to figure out how to rise up the ranks and how to do those things. I was a newspaper reporter in Denver for 16 years. I was a newspaper reporter in Denver until I was 38 years old. 38. And so at one point in time, I had accepted and been comfortable with the fact that I may be covering the Denver Broncos for the Denver Post for the remainder of my career. And I was good with that. And when I wasn't looking around and I wasn't worried about what else might be out there, and when I was focused on doing the best job that I could and writing books for players, lo and behold, that was when NFL Network called me and offered me a job to go into TV, which brings us to another lesson. And by the way, well, this is so much different than anything that we've ever talked about because we're going different ways. Usually it's more chronological. But you may think today that you may want to do a certain job. You may have an idea of something that you want to do, an aspiration that you have. And what I would say is I think that's great. It's also probably not as practical as you think. And more important than being focused on a job, a particular job for the future, is being open-minded to the ever-changing world that we live in. Sports gambling has infiltrated the world. Colleges are hiring GMs. I've never stood up here where I could have looked at the audience and said, there's a whole new industry around colleges that have turned into businesses that are run like minor league professional sports franchises where players are making money, and it's a totally different world that shifted before our eyes. That's a whole new world. There's an AI world that's coming up. That's going to be a whole new world. We're watching sports being broadcast on streaming platforms, Netflix, Amazon. That's a whole new world. When I was coming up, all I wanted to do was to be a baseball beat writer for a local newspaper. Think about how far removed that is from what I'm doing today. It's unbelievable. That to me, when I was coming up, newspapers were the thing. Like if you could become a newspaper writer, that was a big deal. And to become a sports newspaper columnist, which is something that I aspired to do when I went to the University of Michigan and watched Mitch Albom, a columnist for the Detroit Free Press, write things that I couldn't imagine that anybody could write. When he was writing these things, I'm like, wow, that's what I want to do. And so I went to work for the student newspaper, and I tried to be like Mitch Albom. I tried to train to become the best newspaper writer I could, so that when I would get the chance, maybe one day, I would get to cover Major League Baseball for a local newspaper. Now, I can't think of too many things that are more outdated than baseball and newspapers. Think about that a second, okay? And in the early 90s, after I got my job out in Denver, and I love to tell this story, it was such a big deal. Colorado was getting an expansion baseball franchise. This was in the early 90s. This was before many of you were even born. And I had been in Denver for a couple of years at that point in time. I was a general assignment reporter covering the National Football League, the Denver Broncos, a little bit of Colorado football. And Colorado had landed a baseball team. And the area was overjoyed. And so I had a job for a newspaper, and the city I was living in was getting a baseball team, and I thought, wow, this would be a dream come true to cover the Colorado Rockies for the Denver Post. What could be any better than that? And you know what? There was a guy who lived on my block in Denver, on Milwaukee Street, one block over, who felt the same way that I did. And we both interviewed to become the beat writer for the Colorado Rockies, for at that time it was Rocky Mountain News. He didn't get the job. He was pissed off. And he left the Rocky Mountain News and went on to go cover features for the Los Angeles Times, where he wound up winning a Pulitzer Prize, where he then went on to go write books that were turned into movies. He wrote a book called The Tender Bar. I don't know if many of you read it. He wrote Andre Agassi's biography. He wrote Phil Knight's Shoe Dog. He wrote Prince Harry's story. What was the name of that book that came out about a year ago? He's written books that have been turned into movies. He's won a Pulitzer Prize. And the newspaper that we work for deemed him not good enough to cover the Colorado Rockies. And with me, when I was applying for that job, they told me, we think that we have more qualified people than you. We would like you to basically stick to the National Football League. And I was pissed off. I couldn't get to cover the local baseball team for the local newspaper. I was forced to stick on the National Football League, on a team at that point in time, the Denver Broncos, that were struggling. There were players who were in trouble. Nobody wanted to cover the team. It was something that nobody wanted to do. And within a couple of years, the Broncos fired their coach. They hired Mike Shanahan. They won back-to-back Super Bowls. And I got to write 3 different books with Terrell Davis and Mike Shanahan and Bill Romanowski. And I kept my nose down. I did my job. And lo and behold, in 2004, NFL Network came along. NFL Network was just starting out. And back in the day, newspapers were the deal. Like, everybody wanted to work for newspapers. And so you were getting a call, I was getting a call. I had set up my whole career to work for a newspaper. And then I'm getting a call to go work for a league-owned television station. In no universe would that have appealed to me. In no universe when I was sitting in your chairs would I have thought, wow, I'm going to sit out to work for a league-owned broadcast station. And I remember talking to one of my mentors at the Denver Broncos. I'm like, what do you think? He's like, what are you, crazy? Don't do that. What are you going to a league-owned network for? From the Denver Post. The Denver Post at that time was the pinnacle. And I say this because there are so many things in that for you all to pay attention to. Again, you may think that you want to do something. Be open-minded to other things. You have to understand that there are going to be people out there all the time who tell you no, who don't give you the job you want, who don't give you the promotion you want. You don't get it. And you have to understand that every time you get a no, all that means is that there's another opportunity out there waiting for you to go conquer. Nobody is probably waiting to hire some young students who are leaving school or new to the workforce. It's up to you to plot your own path, to go on your own journey, to find what works best for you moving forward, and to figure out a way to go have success. But no matter what you try and what you do, I can tell you that if you're just doing the best job you can, and you're doing all the things that nobody else will, and you're volunteering to work times when no one else does. When I was out in Denver, and I left my home in New York, and I moved to a state that I really didn't know anybody, I would work every holiday. I remember being in the Broncos training facility Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, working on Memorial Day, working on July 4th, because nobody else wanted to. Okay? I'm going to make it such that I do so much work and do things that nobody else wants. I'm going to make it such that I'm going to do my best to make myself indispensable to the newspaper so that they can't move on from me, so that they think of me with other opportunities. I started at the Rocky Mountain News. Within 3 or 4 years, the Denver Post came to hire me. I didn't go because I felt a certain sense of loyalty. A couple of years later, the Denver Post came back to me, hired me again. I stayed there 7, 8 years or so. NFL Network came along, waffled over that decision, went to NFL Network, and guess what? 5 years at NFL Network. Loved NFL Network. Great time. Wanted to stay at NFL Network. When my contract was coming up at the end of 5 years, they were very difficult and frankly wrong about the way they handled the negotiation and the way they treated me. And I did not want to leave, but I also felt like I had no choice to go. And so, as crushed as I was to have to leave NFL Network, ESPN stepped in and gave me a chance to go to work there. This was in 2009. You know what's amazing about that? I went to work at ESPN in 2009. I did not have a Twitter account. I did not have an Instagram account. I was not on Facebook or Threads. And they hired me to start giving NFL information on the newly launched 9 a.m. Sports Center. Like, I mean, just think about that. And 2 months after I was there, my boss calls me and he's like, we're going to have you on Sunday Countdown. I'm like, Sunday Count? Like with Chris Berman and Tom Jackson and Chris Moore, like that show? Yeah. And I had no idea. But again, the point was, I didn't want to leave NFL Network. I was disappointed with the way they treated me. And so we can go through my career and we can go through so many other careers. You'll have this, you'll be met with rejection and dejection and people that don't want you and people that tell you no. And sometimes I understand you'll be disappointed and upset, but you have to understand that if you do your part and work hard and treat people well and work with honor and integrity, that more often than not, the people that say no to you, you're going to get the chance to make them regret their decision later. And we are now in a new world with all these new opportunities. So every time somebody tells you no, you should thank them and look forward to whatever opportunity there is that's ahead. Because there are so many opportunities out there in sports management, in sports business, in whatever field and area you want, sports media. Like, it's a totally different world than the world I entered in when I was your age. When I entered your age, it was a straight, linear path. Most everybody I knew wanted to be going to be a sports writer, probably a sports writer for a newspaper. The pinnacle was to make it to Sports Illustrated, which also goes to show you how times have changed. Like, I don't know anybody that sets out today who's leaving college, no disrespect, that aspires to work at Sports Illustrated. Like that. And when I was coming out, like to work at Sports Illustrated or cover a baseball team for a newspaper, that's the world I entered. The world I'm in today is very different. Now we live on the cutting edge of news. Now we're waiting for updates and texts on things that are happening. Now we're up here talking to you guys. It's a whole new world. You should be excited about the world that's out there. And as long as you do your part to work hard and do the right things, those doors will open. Spreading the word of your name, which I know is something that's on the minds of people who are starting out, like the guy I spoke to yesterday. Word will spread. Where people notice good work. They just do. Right? So we just saw in the NFL, the Jacksonville Jaguars just hired a 34-year-old GM, who frankly, I'll be honest with you, I never heard of his name before this hiring cycle. The Jacksonville Jaguars hired a 29-year-old offensive coordinator, Grant Udinsky, whose name I never heard of before this coaching cycle. The timeline on these things is sped up. But I know that Grant Udinsky, the new offensive coordinator in Jacksonville, and James Gladstone, the new GM in Jacksonville, and I've not met either one of these young men yet. And I can say young because I've been doing this for 35 years. I've been doing it before they were born, basically. They worked really hard to get to where they were. And I just believe that everybody can do something similar in their own respective fields if you're handling your business the right way. I think the best thing to do is probably open it up to questions and answer. So just step on up, just say who you are, where you're from, and then we'll answer the questions.
Why not quick, be fast?
Yeah, that's open, yeah.
News the alley, you gotta get back to the news.
No, we're good. We're here till 11, so we have 35 minutes. Questions, we're good.
All right, this is Professor Gagnon. It's the 8th time hearing you. Always love hearing you talk. But to your point, this year is different, for sure. And I have to ask the question, asked it last year, but I want to ask it now.
You asked me this question last year?
Yeah, and I'm sure after what you just said, it's gonna change. Where do you see AI playing in news moving forward?
No idea. No, I just know it's out there. I know it's gonna be introduced into the world. I'm having a hard enough time getting by on a day-to-day basis without having to figure out how AI is gonna impact me. So we're gonna see, but I have no idea.
Okay.
I wish I did. Anybody that knows, let me know. Yeah.
Adam, my name is Josh Anderson. I'm coming from Winona State. My question for you is that you exist in one of the most fast-paced environments in all of sports, especially in the National Football League of all leagues. So how do you manage, in a wide aspect, all of your resources, contacts, and responsibilities without becoming overwhelmed?
Josh, that's a great question. And I think that it's really hard. There are so many people I know in this industry, and so many people I like, and so many people I don't even get to spend the time with. Last night I was at the dinner with a group of front office executives, coaches, and I went to go to the bathroom, and there was a table of guys that I would consider myself to have good professional relationships with, that I've been in Indianapolis for, in the same city. I haven't seen them for. There were 3 head coaches at a table. It was Mike McDonald in Seattle, it was Kevin Stefanski in Cleveland, it was Brian Schottenheimer in Dallas. I know all of them, and I've known all of them for a while. I hadn't seen any of them all week. I hadn't texted with any of them all week. And I sat down and I was with them for about 15 minutes, could have sat there for 3 hours, but I had to get back to the group I was with. And it's just, it's hard. You just do the best job you can to be with the people that you're with. It's probably never enough. I'm always looking to meet new people, stay in touch with old people, track the news, the fast-paced environment that you're talking. That is very real. I don't know the answer to it. Again, so we're 0 for 2 on answers, right? Other than you're just trying to do the best job that you can to stay on top of things as much as you can. And the truth of the matter is, not everybody's going to get the time they deserve. Unfortunately.
Hi, my name is Brianna Barnes. I'm from Camden, New Jersey. I literally have the same question that he did, so I'm trying to figure out what can I ask you right now.
Yes, if you want.
Let me think. How do you balance your I mean, you just answered that too, so I don't know. Okay.
So my name is Keone Labella. I'm a third year. Keone Labella. I'm a student at Lynn University, Site Source Management, a junior from LA. First, I'd like to say thank you for taking your time out of your day to speak with us. And my question for you is, what is your take on the latest trends in NFL player contracts and negotiations?
I don't know that there is a trend. I mean, the trend is that players are going to get paid as much as they can every year, and some players are going to get it right, and some players are not. And I don't know that there's a trend with NFL contracts. The cap just went up a whole bunch this year, so I think we're going to see certain players make more money than ever before. But then again, not everybody is going to get paid because there's only so much to go around. I can't say that there's any one trend. Like, every year is different. All of a sudden, one year you might see a bunch of 5-year deals given out. Next year you might see 3-year deals. Another year you might see a bunch of players signing 1-year deals because they want to get back to free agency because teams that year didn't have a lot of capital. Like, there's no one answer that I would apply to your question. Unfortunately, it's constantly changing, like the business itself.
Hello, Adam. Joseph Hughes, representing Minnesota State University, Moorhead. My question for you is, what trends or major things do you see in the college football landscape, trying to hire and just compete with everything going on?
Well, that's not my day-to-day job, but I touched on this before. You're now seeing all of these college programs be run like professional sports leagues, like minor league sports organizations. They're all hiring general managers. The general managers have to figure out how to allocate the budgets. They need a salary cap person, the same way that NFL teams do, to figure out how they're gonna spread their NIL money. They have to figure out who's gonna make the roster in college and which players they need to cut, which was never an issue before. Everybody was there, everybody's on the team, some walk on. Now you gotta tell guys, hey, guys, we can't keep you on this program, we have to let you go. You got guys transferring every year, wherever they're gonna go to more money. So like, it's just a whole new world. And like I said, successful college sports teams in particular, but college sports teams are now run, in my mind, sort of like a minor league business operation. I don't mean minor, they're major league, like nothing about Alabama or Michigan would be minor league, but a lot of programs, it's not an NFL team, but it's a notch down.
Hi, I'm James from Chicago. I consult with professional athletes on helping to protect them from investment fraud. Notwithstanding what you said earlier about doing the work, where would you prioritize getting a book out specifically for that group and or posting on LinkedIn and Instagram, kind of showing what you're doing?
I've never been on LinkedIn, so clearly I'm not prioritizing that. I know a lot of people have had success there. But again, I'm living in a different universe. So I'm sure, obviously LinkedIn is a huge deal. I don't even know how it works. So I can't answer that one. Instagram.
Tell them a little bit about your book.
My book, oh, well.
How's it helped your career?
How has what helped my career?
Your books.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I've written 5 books. I don't, early on, it was one of those things where I always wanted to write a book. And I always remember when I was writing my very first book on Terrell Davis, after he won the MVP of Super Bowl 32, it might have taken me 1 week to write the first page of that book because it was like every word meant so much to me. And then after writing the first 3 chapters, I was on one of these old laptop computers. I remember going to Vegas, the computer froze up. I lost the first 3 chapters after the first 2 months. It was devastating. Like I remember bringing the computer to a shop there, and the guy's like, everything's gone. I'm like, wait, guys, we haven't backed up, right? I'm like, no. And this was the day of floppy disks. So I had that first page of the book that took me a week to write, and then the first 2 chapters that took me 2 months to write. I would say that there have not been many times in my 35 years that I've ever been more devastated than losing the first 3 chapters of the Terrell Davis book in my computer. I've written other books since then. I have 5 books out. To me, it's something I've done. I don't think it's impacted my career. I don't think it's given me any more stature or raised my profile. It's just been a part of the journey along the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Owen Brown. Thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, what's the process when you break a story? Like, do you send the tweets? Do you have a single portal that does it all for you? Like, what's the process?
Single what?
Like, do you have a single upload that does the article, the tweet, and the notification? Well, I guess I got my answer. So you just send the tweets?
I write it out myself on my phone.
And ESPN does the rest, I'm guessing.
What does ESPN do? I do everything.
Notifications, the articles.
Oh, yeah, that stuff? Like I have an app, right, that is the ESPN older app that they just created within the last month, by the way. And when there is breaking news, like hopefully at some point today, I will put it on the app. I'll put it on Twitter first. I'll file it to the news desk. I'll post it on the ESPN break. I'll post it on Instagram, on my Instagram account. Post it on Threads. But I don't have anybody that helps me post. I don't know how the software works. I'm not smart enough technologically to even figure that out. All I do is gather the information, process the information, write up the information, and present and post, report the information, right? That's all I do. They can put it on their bottom line. They can figure out where they want to use it on their shows. My job is to get the story, and then everybody else can react to that and do what they want with it. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, my name is Bryson Fields from the University of Kentucky, and I would just like to hear you talk about some of the things that you do to prioritize your mental health and that relationship with your family while being at the top of your profession.
It's a great question. It's a question that wouldn't have been asked 5 years ago. That's a great question today. And it shows you the way that our society has changed. And I've gone to therapists in the past. Right now, at this stage of my life, I feel pretty comfortable and content with where I am. That doesn't mean that a month from now or a year from now that I wouldn't be going through something and might not need help. I know that sleep is probably a part of mental health too. A year ago, I got an Aura ring, which is unbelievable. That literally, documents and charts how you're sleeping, and you can see the deep sleep you get and know when you need more sleep. I also know that we're a day away from March, and when we get to March, and there's NFL news happening at any time of any day because free agency is around the corner and trades are coming and everything like that, I understand that I am not going to sleep as well for the next month as I do in other months of the year. I recognize my resting heart rate and restorative periods are going to be far more infrequent than they will be at other times of the year. We are entering peak stress periods where you're just waiting on everything and charting everything. And so mental health is a part of all that, I guess. And I guess there are certain times that I know that you're going to have to plow through. And maybe that's an old-fashioned, incorrect approach, but that's just how I know my life to be. And I'm sure in April, I'll have times to go on quiet Sunday morning walks and sit in the park and stare at a lake and feed the ducks. But there ain't a lot of time for that in the next month.
Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, my name is Brianna Barnes.
You got a question now?
Yes, actually do. Okay, so on an average, how long does it usually take you to grab the news and then post it with all the right resources and stuff like that?
Maybe if something could happen here in the next 20 minutes, you could see. Sometimes it's like that.
Right. So
sometimes, but other times it can take you literally you're navigating situations for days or weeks. Like sometimes I get a call like, hey, FYI, this team is trading this guy there, and you're like, what? It just happened, and it's like you're reporting on it right away. Other times you can be tracking a situation, like I go back to the Aaron Rodgers situation when Green Bay was trading him. We were waiting weeks, months for anything to happen, and it just didn't. How long have we been waiting on Matthew Stafford now, right? We've been waiting on Matthew Stafford for what, 3 weeks here since the Super Bowl? What's going to happen? So, there have been a ton of calls and a ton of conversations that have been had about Matthew Stafford. At some point in time, there's going to be a verdict, and his future's going to be decided, and it's going to happen quick, right? So, some things are protracted and drawn out, and some things just move very quickly.
Hi, Adam. My name is Mason Unton, and I'm a freshman sports media major at Butler University. My question is, how did per sources become the industry norm? Have you gotten any criticism from using it over and over and over again?
Well, Mason, I love that question. I've never been asked that question. And I'd like to think that I was the very first person to do that. I was always per sources. In fact, the name of my fantasy football and fantasy basketball teams names are per sources. Those are the fantasy. When you say per sources, I'm like, oh, you know my team? Oh, you're talking about stories in the industry. I don't listen. It's just become kind of a thing for me and others. And sometimes, like I said, we'll use Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers. You're having so many conversations with so many people and building up so much information that when it finally comes in, fortunately, quite a bit. So when I'm reporting that Aaron Rodgers is being traded to the Jets for for this and this and this, and the Packers are we're getting back this and this. Per sources. Nobody wants to put their name on that, usually. Sometimes teams or players want to go on the record. You know, you could say, like, about a month ago, it was a Friday night, I was sitting in my house, the phone rings, it's Jerry Jones. And we're talking, and he's kind of going on about Brian Schottenheimer and how he's always been an assistant coach, just an assistant coach. He's just an assistant. That's what he's always been, Adam. He's just an assistant coach. But you know what? Brian Schottenheimer, the assistant coach, is assistant no more. He's now the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Can I report that, Jerry? He said, I want you to report that. I said, can I report it? He said, I want you to report it. So there was no per sources there. There was Jerry Jones there. So if somebody wants their name on the story, they can put their name on the story anytime. But a lot of times people don't want to be known as the person who's sharing information. Thank you, Mason.
Morning, my name is Joey Biddle, I'm a student at
Joey?
Yes, sir. So my question is, especially at this time of the year when news is breaking.
I just took a deep exhale for my mental health there. Another one, thank you.
In the busy months of March and April, players, draft picks are being put on trade blocks, players are signing over to teams. How does that process work with if a team made a signing or made a trade or is putting someone or a pick on the trade block? Do the teams tell other teams? Do they tell you? Do you find out and tell the other teams? Like, how does that process work? If it varies?
You know, I'm glad you asked that because I remember back when I was a newspaper writer in Denver, and there was a summer where the Broncos were in pursuit of Steve Young, and I was going on a vacation for a couple of weeks where I was going to be out of pocket, which is something, by the way, that I would never do right now. Like, you're connected at all times, no matter where you go. But at that point in time, this would have been roughly 1999. I would have been in my early 30s. I didn't have the responsibilities then that I do now. And so I remember I was leaving to go out of the country for a couple of weeks. And one of the sports editors at Denver Post, he said, hey, can you just give me the list of people that we call to check in on to find out if something's happening with Steve Young? As if there's some sort of formula or recipe for a story, like some hotline that you call to find out if there's a trade. It doesn't work like that, okay? Like, it's every situation is different. It is a very hard question to answer, only because there are players now being shopped that the player or team don't want anything out about. There are players who are being shopped that the teams want it out about, so it's an advertisement for other teams to bid. There are quiet conversations that are had. There are public conversations. And my job, I guess, is to filter through all of it, find out as much as you can, find out what's reportable. You know, there's a lot of things that I know that I allow to shape my reporting, but I don't actually say. So the people that I work with on NFL Live, sometimes I'll be answering a question a certain way, and they're all kind of snickering because they go, Adam knows something. You know, he knows, and he's waiting to say something. So there's no secret sauce. There's no magic formula. It's just a feel thing. Like, how do you know when you're going to be in a good restaurant, when you're about to have a good meal? Sometimes you walk in, you think, well, this is going to be really good, and it's not. Or sometimes you think, I know this is going to be special, and it is. Or sometimes you say, this is going to be, and you just know it. Like, there's an instinct and a feel. How do you know in your job when you walk in and the boss is, you know, in a good mood and you want to kind of saddle up next to him, or you know it's a day to avoid it. Like, there's just a feel for all these things. And whatever you're doing, whether it's involving news or a situation in your office, there's just a certain instinct that you have to have, that you have to pay attention to. Yes.
Hey, how you doing? My name's Keenan from the university. A lot of my questions have been answered, but I have another one. So how do you handle the pressure of being the first to report a story while it's also being accurate? It's probably a lot of pressure, right? So.
It is key. So, I mean, how do you handle it? how does an athlete handle when the game is on the line and somebody's got to make a play? How does a coach handle making? That's the job. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you become at it. And it doesn't make the pressure any less great. It doesn't reduce it. It never goes away. Whenever there's a big story, your heart pounds, you feel the adrenaline. And if you're not, then maybe the job doesn't mean as much to you as it should.
Thank you.
How you doing, Mr. Schefter? My name is Malik Mundy. I'm from Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
My question was, how do you establish and maintain trust and credibility with your sources and your audience?
That's a great question, and I would say that you do that over time. You do that through your actions. People know that if you say something, if somebody says, hey, like I've called teams and I'm like, hey, I know you're hiring this guy as the head coach. And the owner or GM might say to me, hey, I know you know it. I know you know it. Can you give me 5 minutes to go call the 3 other finalists so I can let them know that they didn't get the job rather than having them hear it from you? Can you give me 5 minutes? Now, there might be some people that might say, no, I can't. It's a fast-moving world. I'm going to put it out right now. I always, within the scope of my job, try to work with the people that I have relationships with. I try to do the best I can to honor their wishes, knowing that I also have a job to do, and that my job is to report on information. And as long as I'm not depriving the viewers, readers, whatever it may, consumers of that information, then it's all good. If I have to wait 5 minutes and that costs me, well, that's a risk I might be willing to take because they know that I will be a man of my word.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jacob Pierman from IU Indianapolis. My question is, when you have sources and stuff, have you ever been given a source that's been false and that was not a true story whatsoever, and you had to make sure it was that?
Well, Jacob, again, I don't want to be naive, but the people that I deal with largely, I've dealt with for a long time and I've got relationships with. And so I really don't think that people lie to me, generally. I'm sure every now and then somebody does. What I like to say is that I sat with a GM this morning who holds a top 5 pick. Do I think he's going to come out and say, Adam, here's the guy that we love? No. But is he going to talk about the draft? Yes. Is he going to withhold certain things? Sure. Am I sharing with you today, like everything that's going on right now that I'm working? No. You have an idea something's going on? Yeah. Right? So I don't think people lie to me. I'm sure maybe sometimes, but I think the best thing, they professionally and responsibly withhold information at certain times, as they should, to protect their best interests. And when they can share it, they do. Thank you. Yeah.
How we doing, Adam? Steve from Seattle.
Hello.
So I work in local media over there, and I've been building up a few relationships with some of the guys in the Seahawks. Do you have any do's and don'ts as far as fostering relationships with guys on the team?
Yeah. Think back to when you were in high school and college. Think back to what it was like to make friends and forge new relationships. What made you a good friend to somebody, and what made somebody a good friend to you?
Being trustworthy.
Okay.
Being reliable.
Yeah. And they're not your friends, but they're people that you have relationships with. So in any relationship, whether you're dating somebody, or in a school, or whether you're in a building where there are athletes, then it's your job to form those relationships in a proper, responsible way.
Yes, sir. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, Adam. I'm Matthew Lisbell from IU Indianapolis, and I was just curious. So you said you worked in like a stressful environment, basically for like 35 years. So I was just curious on how that impacts your like love for the game as a fan, just being stressed about it all the time.
I don't view it as a love for the game at all. I view it as a love for the job. I view it as a love of having the relationships in the business that I do of tracking information, of delivering it on television. It's not like I'm some football, I like it when it's football season, and I like watching the games, but I like it because it's related to my job. If I had turned out to be a baseball beat writer, I probably would have felt pretty strongly about watching baseball games, and I don't watch a single baseball game now and haven't in years. So it's a function of the job, my love of the game.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Ryan from Philadelphia.
Hi, Ryan.
I just have a quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
For someone that wants to be an agent, what would you give them advice when dealing with the media and how to use them as your friend, because you don't want to give them too much information and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, it's the kind of thing, I think you have to be professionally responsible with information. Like if there's something that you don't want out there, I would never share it. I'd make it a point. Like if your client, was going through a divorce and the big contract was going to be a point of contention there, like you don't want that out there. So don't tell that reporter that the guy's going through a divorce.
So
it's not an issue.
Protect them at all costs, basically?
Well, you work for your client. So your job is to represent your client, whatever that is. Right? If it means that you're telling some reporter that there are 5 teams that are calling you and that helps your client, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
If it means that you're divulging personal information that might hurt him, that's a bad thing. So I think you always have to be thinking, does this help my client for somebody else? And I would never say anything to anybody that I wouldn't be prepared for them to report unless you have a long-standing relationship with that person.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hi, Adam. Natalie Gone here. I'm actually from Missouri Baptist, and I'm doing the interviews today for SNWW. I'm looking at going into on-field reporting, and a huge part of what you do is connecting the fans to the game. So I was wondering what you do to really engage them and get them feeling like they're a part of the game in your field and live sports.
Yeah, I don't think like that. I just think, again, I come back to that basic formula that we've been talking about all of. I come back to trying to do the best job I can. My job is to cover the National Football League, to report on information. If that brings you or somebody else closer to the game, and they're tracking their favorite team, and they want to know if they're signing this player, trading that player, firing this coach, hiring that coach, that's great. If it doesn't, that's not my concern. My concern is to report information. As a sideline reporter, your job is to provide the most interesting, timely, informative reports that you can. If that makes them feel closer, that's great. If it's not, you're still doing your job the best that you can.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Schefter. My name is Dalton Scott. I'm a freshman at Bloomington, in our room this year. My question for you is, after all your time as a writer, a reporter, and an author, what's been your favorite story to cover?
Well, I would just say this, that any story you're out in front on is your favorite story to cover. That's what I would say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Adam. My name is Eric Krasinski. I'm from Akron, Ohio. My question for you is, today you talked about, like if you work hard, let the work do the talking for you.
Yeah.
But I remember last year you talked about sticking your foot in the door. And I'm just wondering what kinds of things you did to stick your foot in the door, whether, how did you seek your opportunities? Or do they just come naturally to you?
I would just say that it's a job to find a job. And I had so much rejection along the way. There were so many people that told me no, that it took me over 2 years to get a full-time job. So again, you're not starting out with this idea that people are courting you. It's a job to find a job. You got to be prepared for the rejection. You got to be willing to pivot. You got to be willing to try other things. And I did say getting in the door because I think that's important. You may want to be a baseball beat writer for the newspaper, but the newspaper may have an opening as the one who cleans out the mailroom. And I think it's just important to get in that door. And if I'm cleaning the mailroom and delivering the mail to each person and getting everybody coffee, well, they're gonna get the best coffee, the hottest coffee, in a timely, efficient manner, and they're gonna be like, look at this guy, like this guy has the coffee there every, yeah, let's give him more work. So I just wanna get in the door, whatever it is. I don't care whether I'm in the mailroom, cleaning the bathrooms, internships, whatever it is, get in the door. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, Adam. My name is Mark Holloway. I'm a corporate lawyer and sports attorney. In my previous life, I advised on public company mergers, and one of the things we were always concerned about is like leaks and people using the media as a way to exact leverage. So my question to you is, how do you see your role when people provide you information for a leverage player using the media as a way?
It's a great question, and I understand what you're saying. And of course, people want their stories presented in certain ways. Like we could look at any story. Like the other day, Abdul Carter's got a stress reaction. I find out about it. I call his agent, and his agent's like, we're still waiting to find out whether it gets hurt. Now, the agent is going to say to me, boy, this is a disaster. Like this guy's the #1 pick, and he can go from making $40 million to falling out of, like, maybe that can happen if it's a bad injury. So my job is to present information. So if he's saying that, it's also my job to get another opinion, maybe of a doctor, to say, hey, these are risky injuries. So now I got his side, I got another side, and to get various viewpoints depending on what the story is. Are there people going to be trying to use the media? Of course, I guess. But I try to stick to black and white. Like, as an example, I know that if you just go through a lot of other reporters' tweets, when there's some assistant coach being hired, you'll notice they call them key hires, and this guy's a riser, and they start editorializing the hire. Go through my tweets the last years, recently. You won't see any of that. This team hired that guy. He held that position. This is who he is. I don't need to try to elevate that guy the way that other reporters are trying to do when they're getting a story from an agent. Like, I'm going to stick as much as I can, whether I succeed or not, basic facts. Facts are good. My job is to report facts. Facts are not leveraged, usually. Thank you.
Two more.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Doug Mills. I'm from Shawnee, Kansas. And my question is there any player in this current draft class that you would be really excited for if they ever?
I'm not there because I'm living in a free agent world that I'm just not in the draft right now. So I couldn't, I really don't follow college football that much because I'm so
well, then I guess
dialed in. Now, I can answer that question in April, but I'm not equipped to answer it in the way I want.
Last question.
Yeah.
Hi, Adam. I'm Maddox from Ball State.
Yep.
My question is, when you meet with these coaches and general managers, I assume they ask you for inside information on other teams. Are you allowed to disclose that?
Well, again, I recognize that people want to talk to me because they feel like I'm informed of what's going on. I'm happy to discuss everything. I never want to violate the trust of a person. So,
thank you.
So Adam, as you're always in a hurry, and I'm lucky to have you for an hour, we're lucky to have you. Wait right here, Liz will always take Adam out, but please give that SMWW a thank you.